When you first meet a client, it's really interesting to develop a relationship with that client and to understand exactly what they do and how they do it and what they want to do, whether it be a service, a product or something that they want to promote. Once you've been able to understand what that client wants, it's a fantastic opportunity to then develop ideas for the client, to understand where they can actually take the project. It's a time when you can explore all possible ideas from both a visual and a narrative sense. A lot of people think that design is purely visual, but in fact it's an interpretation or a translation of a language, and it is a language itself. So when a client gives you a challenge, which is to develop a branding or develop a campaign or a visual description of what they do, you have to use your thinking skills to develop those ideas before you start to translate them into lines on a page. We work as designers in a very collaborative world, in that we are not like visual artists who can work in a studio, create their piece of art and then represent it on a wall and say, this is my piece of work and this is what I do. Designers, from the very beginning, actually have to have dialogue and communication with an external party, usually someone that employs you, generally. It might be a purely collaborative non-employment situation, but generally there's some sort of dialogue between yourself and the other person that you're doing the work for. So that kind of collaboration I find quite interesting, and so I bring that back to the studio as well. So with the team, the creative team at Sweet, all the work that comes through is very much developed in a collaborative sense. So we will have quite a few meetings throughout the process of idea development where, as the art director, I will direct the team, give them a really strong brief as to what has been discussed with the client, and then we will sit and discuss it in very loose terms and get very excited. And then there's a sort of a series of stages in terms of creating the visual narrative. So with Malthouse, they have 2 theatre seasons. Each theatre season has about 8 or 9 shows. I have an initial briefing with the artistic director, who often is a director of at least 1 or 2 shows each season, and we're given the scripts to read. So the studio reads the scripts, at least 2 or 3 of us read the scripts. So we understand the language of the writer, we discuss and dissect the script. We might reference and look on the internet in terms of, you know, what this writer has written before. And then what we do is we present a visual representation of what we believe would be a key art image for each of those theatre shows. Once the key art imagery has been produced for the client, then there's this lovely extension of all the material into all the different graphic forms. There's the season's program, there's all the single ticket information, there's the press ads, there's the backlets, there's the programs. So in terms of the pureness of a design job, there's all the kind of applications as well. In any design practice, I think what happens is that you do have these explosions of excitement when you do meet someone who likes the way you think and you like the way they think. And when that happens, not only do they become the dream client, you become the dream design team as well. I think that when you have that perfect client and you have that great collaborative consciousness and the thinking is aligned, you do have fabulous outcomes. The definition of designer has changed enormously, and I think it's been a really positive change. When I think about the early days of the roles of designers, I think it was much more confined and refined and defined about what we were allowed to do and how much we were allowed to think. And there was a definition, I think, that was a little bit more that it was a visual narrative and a visual narrative exclusively. So we were given elements and we were asked to compose those elements in a visual language that would allow people to understand. And I think over the 20 years what's evolved, which has been so exciting to be a part of, is that the thinking component of design has been extended enormously. And I think it hasn't just come from the design sector. I think what's happened is that the population of the world is understanding the notion of design across all the disciplines, and consequently is allowing for more dialogue from us to them, and that's been really exciting.